This is my Hyper Racer X1 race car, and not long ago we ran into a small problem while on track. That was the sound of a rod exiting the side of the engine and trying to find the International Space Station. But that wasn't even the worst part. In the process, the car caught on fire, damaging an unknown number of components. In the last episode, we pulled the engine and built an entirely new one from scratch. So the goal for this episode is simple. Get the new engine in the car, upgrade some critical systems, wire everything up, and start it for the first time. I only had a 3-day window to get this car running again, which meant there was no room for chasing ghosts. With fire damage, nothing is ever straightforward, and there were a number of problems waiting for us, any one of which could have stopped this car from coming back at all. This was not going to be easy.
There it is.
So back at HQ, the first thing was to assess the wiring loom, and there was plenty of damage to go around. Luckily, it wasn't too bad, and the solution ended up being quite simple. I simply wrapped some glue-filled heat shrink around the wire damage and simply sealed it back up to prevent anything from shorting on other wires. And then I had lunch. Grilled is really good. Sorry, back to work. I spent a little more time going over the wiring loom and just kept patching any wire that I thought had the potential to short out with the lightly toasted insulation. Then we could install the loom into the car, which needs to go in before the engine, which is why I'm tackling this issue first. With the loom loosely in position, I decided the next best thing to do would be stripping the car down. The Venturi tunnels on this car were repaired hand-me-downs when I first built it, and today another set have popped up that are in much better condition, so I'll be using those. But that means stripping the rear lower control arms, the radiators, which will also be upgrading to the new spec, and the oil cooler. Yep, that is part of my engine. That should not be there. As I remove the rear wing, there should be one bolt at the front holding it up, allowing us to gradually lower the Well, at least these are going in the bin anyways. The other side came off much easier, but it was time to start prepping the engine by installing the headers onto the motor before wheeling it in and hoisting it into position. Then we can bolt in the engine mounts and have the engine fully suspended in the chassis. With the engine in the car, it seems like smooth sailing from here. But this is where I was going to encounter my next problem. The fuel line going from the tank to the filter had some major fire damage, as well as the brake line that runs on the left side of the car. Luckily, Hyper Racer actually had stock of both of these custom parts and were able to replace them straight away, and I got them installed on the car. So I've got a bit of a game plan here. Essentially what my next steps are going to look like is getting this wiring loom kind of fixed into place. Because I've got the fuse box in there, that kind of sets up a bit of a datum point for this wiring loom. So that's there, and then you can kind of just follow it around, secure it all into position, and that'll put all these connectors exactly where they need to be. I've already put the coil packs in and hooked all that up. So again, that sets the position of that and makes it really easy for me to secure the rest of the loom. From then onwards, we're going to go on to putting the rear carrier in, which is essentially, if I've still got them yet, these plates here, plus whatever bolts that are in there, will essentially mount the engine to the rear carrier and tie the whole thing together. Once we've done that, I'm then going to move on to, I think, the cooling system. So there's a lot of cooling tubes that run through here and in here as well into there, into the water pump and whatnot, that I can do while I've got no tunnels on here. It's going to make it super easy, give me a lot of access to that kind of stuff. So once we do that, then I think we can go on to mounting up the tunnels, the radiators, the oil cooler, hooking everything back up, and then, yeah, getting pretty close to firing this thing up. I mean, I'm actually nowhere near firing this thing up, but we're heading in the right direction. Now, because I'm so smart, I forgot to turn on the microphone. So I was probably saying something important. But basically, we'd installed the rear drive carrier mounting plates that connect the engine to the rear of the chassis, essentially acting like the rear engine mount. Next, it was time to install some of the cooling piping that lives in the engine bay, and we had such good access at the time with the tunnels removed. But it wouldn't be a fire-damaged rebuild without discovering yet another issue. It was at this moment when I found the connector for the head temp sensor had actually snapped when I removed the damaged engine and forgot to unplug it. So this needs to be soldered and reconnected. Then it was time to tidy up some wiring before discovering my next big problem. Turning the car on to test if the loom worked and we had power did absolutely nothing. No lights, no nothing. After probing around with a multimeter for a few minutes, I managed to find a blown starter fuse which prevents the ignition from doing anything. And once again, we'd missed another close call with the wiring gods. Now, in order to get the engine fired up, we first need to connect the cooling system and specifically the oil cooler so that the oil system can be sealed off. For this, we'll need to mount our replacement tunnels and do a few other things. So we've made some huge progress on the X1. We've got both of the tunnels mounted up and you can see this shot from the back just looks absolutely insane. You can get a really good look here of what the ground effects floors actually look like and just how big they are. Coming around here though, we've also got our oil cooler on, which is the last thing we needed to do to have the engine fully sealed up, ready to put oil in it. Here, I'm loosening off the oil filter and removing the spark plugs to prime the oil system. Essentially what we're going to do is hit the starter button and let the engine rotate with no load with the plugs removed and wait until the oil exits the loose filter to ensure that we have oil pressure in the engine. This was also going to be a big moment as I still had no idea if the wiring for the starter motor was going to be functional. This was a big success. Now we can tighten up the oil filter, reinstall the plugs, and then fire this thing up to hear it run for the very first time. So we had done it. The engine was running. Or so I thought. While I didn't realise it yet, there were going to be a few more problems coming my way when it eventually came time to run the engine up to temperature. But in order to do that, we needed to build the new radiators and get them installed onto the tunnels. This process involves some rubber isolators and brackets that bolt onto the radiator to prevent it from cracking, bolting them onto the tunnels on each side of the car, and then fitting the remaining cooling piping. Then we could finally fill it up with waterless coolant, which can take a little while. In order to properly bleed the cooling system, we needed to run the engine up to temperature to open the thermostat, which would then allow us to check if each radiator was getting hot. But as soon as I turned it on, I realized that something wasn't right. So much so that the engine just completely shut off. When dealing with a fire damaged car, the first thing you wonder is if you actually need a completely new wiring loom, which for me meant major setbacks and going over budget, which realistically wasn't even possible. So for now, I embarked on trying to diagnose why it wasn't running right, which after several minutes of looking over every crevice of the wiring loom, I thankfully found the smoking gun.
There it is. Fixed it.
The idle control sensor, which makes so much sense as to why the engine was dying after I would rev it, because it couldn't control the idle when the engine was coming back down to the idle RPM. And then it died again. But I suspect the ECU was so confused after trying to run without that sensor so many times, so I started it back up and it ran perfectly, which was a huge relief.
Fucking amazing.
With the engine running, that was a huge tick on our list. However, we only had one more day to finish this car off. So starting off the final day, I made a list and attempted to tick off every single thing. Having a look at this list here of all the things that we need to do to get this car running, I think we're at the very pointy end of it. So to go over things really quickly, all we really need to do coming around the back here is install the rear lower control arms, which were obviously removed to fit the tunnels. Once we have installed the rear lower control arm, just have a look. Also, we've got the push rod as well that connects the lower control arm to the suspension. We've done the throttle cable. We've got to put the airbox on and a new filter in it. We need to put the skid plate and the engine cover on, so that's essentially the middle floor of the car. To be honest, that's kind of it. There's a muffler that needs to go on and this coil pack retainer, which essentially just bolts on across here to keep the coil packs down. Yeah, enough yapping. Clearly, I've got a fair bit of work ahead of me and just the rest of today to finish the car. The control arms and push rods on these cars are super simple to install. They mount to the car with nylon bushings and bolts, which I'm able to reuse with some fresh nylock nuts. Then we can attach the push rod from the bell crank to the lower control arm and bolt the upright to the control arm. Nuts and bolts, folks. It's really that simple. Now, some slightly more boring stuff. I've got the airbox apart to replace the filter, and have a look at how bad the old one is. Hopefully we can gain some free horsepower just with that. Installing the airbox on the car, this basically allowed me to complete the wiring as I now had everything in place to mount the ECU and the last remaining sensors. And to basically finish off the engine entirely, we can install the clutch slave cylinder, which will hook up to the clutch master later, but this also mounts the shifter cable so that we can get gears. With the end of this rebuild in sight, there was one more major task that we had to complete. Alright, so we've made some huge progress actually. The engine, I would almost say, pending going over it one more time, is fully together, ready to go. What I'm working on at the moment though is this clutch slave, or I guess the master relocation actually. So with the new rads and the new coolant piping in a different direction, it frees up this area right here to move the clutch master and bolt it to the side of this, which is obviously covered by this side pod. The benefits of that are going to be the fact that the clutch hydraulic line goes from 2200 millimeters to 900. So it's a lot shorter and it's a lot easier to bleed. And what that means is if you have a really long line and the bleed isn't very good, that air can expand with heat, obviously in the conditions that we're in, and it can disengage the clutch as it's going to expand and push on that rod, and then you can destroy a clutch. The other benefit of this for me specifically is the fact that because I'm quite a taller driver, I've got my pedal box quite a ways forward. And if the pedal does go long, it can contact this clutch master. And then I think that's kind of it. At that point, I can put the seat back in, I can put the floor on. Because we have new tunnels with a couple of different mounting holes here, I might need to modify the carbon engine cover that goes around this area. And once that's done, we can lower it down and start aligning it and do all the other things that I said I was going to do. With all of that done, we can reinstall the shift lever and attach the rest of the shifter cable. Getting that all lined up as well as installing the muffler, and as unfortunate as that is, we do need to run these to be legal at most of the tracks in Australia. Then the final piece of the puzzle is to install the carbon Kevlar skid plate and the carbon engine cover, which completes the floor of this car. Then we can put the car onto the floor to complete what is basically the final job on the car. Here I'm just leveling the rear wing and bolting the end plates onto the tunnel. Alright, so we're pretty much ready to wrap things up here. This is all pretty much done. The only thing I need to do is bleed the brakes and the clutch, which is kind of boring, so I'm not going to show that. I am going to just pop it onto this little trolley here so that I can take the wheels off and bleed all that, and then it kind of goes on the trailer and sits there until the next episode where we are going to shake down the car at Winton Motor Raceway. So very excited to get back behind the wheel, and I'll see you all in the next one.